Of course, for our speakers, there are a handful of videos that show up in the top. I think that helps humanize things, but feel free to have your video showing or not at your preference. Please note that today's presentation is recorded. This is recorded, so be aware by attending this that this will be recorded. As far as a few other elements, you can post questions or comments in chat. And what we'll do then is largely hold questions for the end, unless there's something so burning we must intervene to ask it, and I'll serve as moderator to make the judgment, I suppose, whether or not something's so burning we need to intervene. Otherwise, we'll hold questions or comments for the end, and we should have time for discussion. And our students, our speakers today have agreed to host an additional 30 minutes after the workshop's over just to chat with you as undergrad or grad students too. So with that, again, if you're coming in, welcome, ensure you're muted, and again, feel free to post comments or questions in chat. And at this point, we'll get started then. It's Thanksgiving in a few days, so let's give thanks that we get to have a virtual communion today. What do we have in store? We get to address a burning question: why become an anthropologist? For some of you, you may have already committed and be going down that track, whether as an anthropology major as an undergrad or perhaps a grad student steeped in this, perhaps even a faculty member who's even more steeped in this. But for others, this might just be an interesting question to entertain over the next hour. And we're delighted today to have Brian Paco Alvarez and Veronica Kirin join us today to ask this question, to address this question, and as part of a virtual UNLV anthropology presentation. This is an especially salient question, again, for any undergraduate students who might be attending, but also for graduate students and faculty to contemplate the broader relevance and potential impacts of anthropology. By way of introduction, Mr. Alvarez earned a bachelor's degree in anthropology from UNLV, so he is an alum. He's currently a graduate student in the Urban Leadership Program at UNLV, and he has been and is incredibly active in the Las Vegas culture and arts scene. He's the founding museum manager at Museum Fiasco, located at the Area 15 Arts and Entertainment Complex in Las Vegas, and he's owner of Psionic Artworks and Fabulous Story Tours. He's held positions at Zappos, the Neon Museum, the Liberace Museum, the Hispanic Museum of Nevada, and many others. He also gave a fantastic UNLV anthropology talk in 2014, which some of us here may recall. Veronica Kirin is an anthropological consultant. After earning her bachelor's degree in anthropology at Grand Valley State University in Michigan, she's undertaken a variety of projects and positions that illustrate the value of anthropology. She's a serial entrepreneur and works with clients on varied cultural and technological disruptions and practices. She's conducted extensive interviews leading to a book and documentary entitled Stories of Elders: What the Greatest Generation Knows About Technology That You Don't. We all know about technology now, so here we are, but we're all learning a lot as we go in 2020. She's also conducting interviews for an ongoing project, Stories of COVID. So thank you, Mr. Alvarez and Ms. Kirin, for joining us today. And with that, we turn it over to you.
Woo! I'm clapping for Paco. Yay! And funnily enough, I've tried pinning you, Paco, and so I'm going to be like speaking to your godlike voice as we go back and forth.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for having us. I'm super excited. I actually have been spending several visits a year for the past several years in Las Vegas. For some reason, Las Vegas keeps pulling me back in. And even now, when I can't technically visit Las Vegas, I'm still involved with Las Vegas. So this is really wonderful. I know Paco and I, we've talked a lot about just how excited we are to be here and to talk to all of you. I think we're both really passionate about anthropology and its strengths. And so we're just really stoked to be here. Paco, do you want to say anything by way of hello?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Veronica. It is such an honor and a pleasure to be here speaking to my colleagues and our colleagues, and especially to students at my alma mater, UNLV. I'm also a grad student at UNLV, so I had to wear my grad rebel on. So anthropology changed my life, and this year, 2020, has been considering everything that's happening globally, has been a very positive year. And I met Veronica this year. She reached out via LinkedIn, and we've been friends ever since. And it's been a very fruitful, positive, wonderful year for connections. And I think the beauty of being human beings is that no matter what may happen, we're banding together and supporting each other. And I think we as anthropologists are in a very unique position to be able to do that. So thank you for having me, Dr. Gray, and the students at the university.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Oh, yay, little claps. Paco and I had a conversation about how we want to conduct this, and we really don't want to be like talking at you. We want to make this into a conversation. So Esther is going to be handling questions and keeping track of them, but throughout, Paco and I are just going to be having a conversation about our own experiences of anthropologists outside of academia and what we see within the private sector as the strengths that anthropology brings, in addition to experiences within academia. And so it's going to be really casual and really I think something that you guys will enjoy. So let's dive into this crazy thing. Why become an anthropologist? There we go. Hey, you skipped one. There we go. So it seems like my computer sometimes lags a little when it's screen sharing, so bear with me as I switch slides. The general purpose of this presentation is to highlight how anthropology is a flexible, insightful, and holistic area of study, which is curiosity driven, which Paco and I agree that that's one of the major strengths of our field of study. Whether we're focused into the past or present, we're trained to put aside our own biases and seek the truth. And this baseline training, we agree, is perfect for us to be innovators in any industry, in any field. And so we're going to work to convince you of that today. Oh, and I did skip one. So our table of contents, just to give you a clear overview of what we're going to be talking about. So we want to talk about some of the problems that we see within anthropology lovingly. We'll go over our objectives of the talk, definitely dive further into introductions and our own backgrounds, and then speak to the strengths of anthropology, the issues that may be holding anthropology back. And then, of course, talk about some famous non-academic anthropologies, and then finally dive straight into discussion and Q&A, which I hope will be just lovely and lively. And Paco is a collector of clocks and will be keeping time for us because we don't want to go so far past, we can just get talking. We don't want to take up so much time that you all don't get to discuss with us. We really, really want to make sure that we get good discussion in. Paco, do you want to talk about the problems we want to solve?
Well, we want to take over the world and just make it a better place. I think ultimately, I think the strengths of anthropologists and how we are curious and how we look at the world and the places we work and the cultures in which we grew up in are really, really key to how I've been able to take my career. To the chagrin of the historians at the history department at UNLV, I've been dubbed about 20 years ago, a little less than 20 years ago, an urban historian. And it really came down to my studies as an undergrad at the university when I was looking through the archives at UNLV Special Collections, which is a treasure trove for you archaeologists out there, or people who are curious in archaeology. You can go to the university and look in the library, and you begin getting very curious about, what culture and what society was like 115 years ago in Las Vegas and when the city was founded. And based on the research I did there, I was able to create a beautiful exhibition in 2005 on the history, on the centennial of the city. And it was at what would eventually become the Mob Museum. And that was a post office before, and now it's one of the most top 20 museums in the country. And so we're in a very unique position, not just where we go is historians try to find, moments in history and put dates to it and all that. But we dig deeper. We dig far deeper in truly understanding what culture was like, what society was like, and think about what Las Vegas was like 115 years ago without air conditioning, and the impact it had on the culture here in the society. So we definitely, I see myself as a problem solver because when I work with people, and especially now that I'm managing a museum and I have 8 very different individuals and all millennials, I empathize and I'm mindful of each and every one of those people and they and how they look at the world. And we've built a great team. We call ourselves the Dream Team. I haven't had a dream team in 20 years, so it's exciting to see each and every one individually and see them and as they've grown up through their culture. And so we definitely are a very unique position in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really are. And I really do think that we're going to get into a little bit more as to where we believe this narrow focus within our training within anthropology, and even that lack of PR push that I think Paco and we've really discussed ad nauseum, where anthropology, I'm a firm believer that every single person on the planet should be an anthropologist. And I feel, I know I'm biased, but it sets us up, just like Paco said, to see the world through as unbiased a lens as is possible for an individual human. We all hold our own biases, and it's impossible to get away from them completely. But because it creates a level playing field within each of us in order to connect with other humans, I think the world would be a much better place if we all had a little bit of anthropological training at least. And so, yeah, we're going to really get into that. All right, so our objective today is to really reveal the strengths, as we've said, of anthropology, not just within academia, but really the world over. And so I'm going to go first and just give a little bit of my background. Peter already introduced me, so I'm not going to read this to you, but I am an anthropologist and I happen to be in the private sector. I am currently a coach to other entrepreneurs. I help them scale up and deal with imposter syndrome as they grow their businesses. But I also have spent time doing a little bit more applied anthropology. And today I am doing ethnography about the pandemic, which I am really excited to tell you about as well, to give you an idea of what it's like to use a degree outside of academia. Paco, do you want to say a few more words about it? I mean, you've already given us such a good background as to what you're up to now, but you've been up to, like, you've done so much.
I'd like not to float my own boat, but, being one of the foremost experts who hasn't written a book about it yet on the cultural arts in Southern Nevada, there's not one cultural institution in Southern Nevada, and for the most part, the state, that I haven't in some way touched. And my fingers are really involved in the museum world. I had the honor of working with the late, great Dr. Vicky Kassman, who sadly departed us a month ago. And, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Vicky when she was teaching at UNLV, and she was teaching museum studies courses at a time when Las Vegas really didn't have a lot of cultural institutions. And now we have some great cultural institutions such as the Neon Museum, the Springs Preserve, the Mob Museum, the Atomic Testing Museum, to name a few. And she instilled in us an understanding of that field. And I went on to work in that field. And the first job I had was working at the Liberace Museum with Liberace and all his rhinestones. And I got to meet a lot of celebrities, and you'll see a picture of that later. And so really my career has always been in museums and in really understanding art and culture. I went to the very first Friday. I have the First Friday logo tattooed on my arm. I may show you that later. So very involved in the arts. I love the arts. It's not going to make me rich, but it's going to make me very happy. And I know that it has a very important role to play in the future of Las Vegas and in the future economy of our community.
And Esther and Peter, I think you've got a task of pushing Paco towards writing that book, because I know that we want to celebrate when our alumni do publish. It's always a wonderful thing. So let's nudge them along. So a little bit about me. The three areas I really have used anthropology are with the AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps. The NCCCs are a branch of AmeriCorps. They're funded through AmeriCorps, which is a government program that's similar to Peace Corps, but within the United States. The difference is the NCCCs are a little bit more like the National Guard in that we train on a military base and deploy across the country. And that was really where my applied anthropology came in. And I'll discuss that a little bit more in a second. As an entrepreneur for a decade now, a little over a decade, in fact, and finally doing ethnography with my 2 books. And so here I am in American Samoa in 2009. I was deployed there right after the tsunami. And I put boots on the ground 4.5 days after the tsunami hit. So we were talking about a very raw disaster zone. And in fact, I have post-traumatic stress disorder from this experience, unfortunately. I deployed with the Red Cross, as you can see from the backpacks that I am laden with. Those are the kits that we were handing out just before we were pulled out. We did a lot of case working while we were there, which I felt very anthropological. I actually really loved it because we were connecting with families about sensitive topics. And they were families who were in a culture different than my own. And so we did a lot of cultural training before we deployed to make sure that we understood at least little parts of the language. I pick up language pretty fast, but of course I'm not going to learn it in the 2 days that I'm doing my briefing in order to get there. But we were able to, make sure that we were sitting in the right way. So Samoa is still chief led. The towns still have a chief who basically asks, like the mayor, if your feet are pointing towards the leader, you're being rude. And so little things like that along the way we picked up. And I really took the helm on that with my teammates to make sure that we all had a good understanding of the culture that we were being put into, especially because we were in a disaster zone. So their sensitivities were already heightened. They were already up here with regards to the emotions they were feeling. And it was not something that we wanted to do where we came in and were rude accidentally. I do admit I did get scolded at one point because I forgot to sit down with my meal. And my head was above our leader, and that again was considered rude, and also rude to the food because they're very respectful with regards to something that's given its life for your own life. I told Paco in private, so I'm going to tell you all in public. I did have the honor of receiving a tatau, so a traditional tattoo with a boar's tusk while I was there on one of my last days from one of the 8 remaining masters in the world who know how to do it. And so it was an incredible experience, and I definitely felt like I was touching my roots with regards to Margaret Mead's studies and just anthropology as a whole. I think my degree really helped me in these scenarios where I was doing disaster relief and working with people who were already sensitive, and then we were outsiders who were coming in to help them. And Paco, of course, if there's something that I missed that you know about, you're welcome to jump in and goad me a little.
No, it sounded great, and I didn't know that you got scolded, so that's
yeah. And they were, I mean, I think I told you, so there was an aftershock earthquake. We had to run up the mountain, and that's where the trauma comes in. But there was a point once we were all safe and assured that we were just going to hold down the fort on higher ground, we had at that point learned the traditional songs. We knew all the words. And so we were singing these songs in Samoan with the locals. And it was a really soothing and very communal experience. And I wouldn't have had it any other way. It was just incredible. So there's just pieces like that happened, even though I was only deployed there for a month. As we were leaving, they did cook us a traditional meal. And so we watched them slaughter a pig, and they showed us how to butcher it and how to put it in the ground with palm leaves and the coals and bury it. And so I can't say, you know, we were outsiders, but we were welcomed, and we were seen as supporters, which was, I think, just we got a lens in, I think, in a different way because of that. So due to the PTSD, I had to cease my work in what I believed was going to be applied anthropology. So I wanted to follow in Paul Farmer's footsteps. Couldn't keep doing it. Having a panic attack when you walk into the Red Cross just like doesn't jive with doing that kind of work. So I initially started a nonprofit 501c3 doing similar work, thinking that I could control it, and that didn't work out. But what it did do was like the fire in me for entrepreneurship, and I soon after founded a tech company, which is where this picture was taken from several years ago. And then now I've sold that company and I'm coaching other entrepreneurs. And what I've found is that anthropology is still useful even when I'm not technically using it. So, you know, an academic anthropologist would say, you're not an anthropologist right now. And I absolutely am, because they have clients all over the world, and they have clients all over the world, which means that it is my job to help them speak to their target markets and reach out to them and have that understanding. And I really feel that anthropology gives me such an edge in that. I'm not saying like, you know, I'm better at selling products because I'm an anthropologist. It's that I can reach out authentically and connect with others worldwide because of my degree, and because of that, I help my clients, and I'm very picky with my clients because I'm very, very clear on do no harm with anthropology. But I find people who just want to support and help the world, just like I did as an applied anthropologist, as, you know, following in Paul Farmer's footsteps. And I get to do that in a wider way and using anthropology in a way that I wasn't taught to use it, but still exactly in the way that we were trained. And there was even one time where I had a marketing director. I told him my degree was in anthropology because he could tell I wasn't a normal businesswoman, if you will. And he said, "Oh, I would much rather hire an anthropologist than I would a marketing director." So that was a cool moment, pretty validating. But I do use anthropology still. So I am an author, and I do conduct ethnography. So my first book, which you see here on the screen, Stories of Elders, I drove 12,000 miles to interview 100 elders across the United States. And they're in all different culture groups. Again, I knew this is anthropology coming into play. I knew that if I was going to be meeting with them and asking them for their life stories, that I had to go in person in order to connect with this generation. And so I did a Kickstarter and fundraised and hopped in a car alone and was on the road for 6 weeks. And probably there's some lessons in there about self-care, but that's not what we're here for. So this book helps us see into the past, but also into the present. I really wanted to understand technology through the people who had lived before it really had evolved. And so I talked to people who grew up with crank cars and now they're using a smartphone. It again, it's our degree that brought me to that conclusion that I couldn't just like study how technology is changing us by talking to people who have only known a world with technology. That's not going to jive. You need that contrast, and you need the voices of people who have lived before in order to really get it. And so that's my first book. That was my first like deep foray into doing ethnography on my own. And this was non-university sanctioned. This was not academically sanctioned. And it's a book that's meant to be able to get in front of other people who are not in academia. I think that to record these histories and have them only stay in the hallowed halls would be a disservice to our culture and to our society. So that's why I've been doing them the way I'm doing them. Stories of COVID is almost exactly the same, but this time I'm doing it virtual, which means I can do worldwide interviews. I've done 140 so far. And again, the purpose is to document the pandemic, but I get to do it in real time, which Paco, you can probably speak to this, but I don't know a whole lot of anthropologists who get to study a major cultural event as it happens. It's oftentimes that we're doing retrospective or at least like lived stories, but it's pieces. It's never the whole. And I feel like really excited when I'm also not nervous about the pandemic in general that I get to do this. What do you think, Paco?
I think it's fascinating. I look at Las Vegas in particular, my hometown, and how we are reacting to what's happening. I mean, if the pandemic, I mean, we lived through, at least I lived through the recession of the early 90s. I lived through 9/11. I lived through the economic crash of 2008, and now this. And Vegas, just as Vegas starts going up, it collapses again. And from working from my days at the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, when I was the curator of the Las Vegas News Bureau archives, I was embedded in that culture for 6 years and really understanding how they market this destination to the world. And we knew who our target markets were globally. And then taking off and going on to work at Zappos, and then just as Zappos was blossoming really, and then moving downtown, and we did the relocation to downtown, and then leaving that and seeing where we're at now in the middle of this global pandemic in Las Vegas, really, really seriously struggling. I've never seen the city, this pales, 2008 pales in comparison to what's happening now. Yet,
Yeah.
the big challenge we have is that a lot of the politicians here locally, a lot of people that have been here a long time or part of the gaming industry, don't realize that we can't continue doing business as usual. And a lot of the old time politicians that are still in office, they're like, well, we're a one-trick town, we're a one-trick pony town. This is the way we are. We've got to stick to what we do best. And yet the cultural arts, has taken a very important leadership role in informing the politicians, informing businesses that, hey, look, we're not going to be thrown away like we were every time before. We're going to take a leadership role. And so it's fascinating time to actually witness what is happening on the ground right here. And in particularly, Veronica, if I can, is say, and I live downtown. I'm looking at Las Vegas Boulevard out my window, and Black Lives Matter. To see what happened downtown and how Black Lives Matter has really energized the culture of our country is heartwarming, because I remember the Rodney King riots of 1991, and I lived through that, and then seeing it now and just seeing the diversity of cultures supporting the Black Lives Matter movement in the middle of a global pandemic. It's scary times, but it's exciting to be able to be in it and experience it and be part of that and really document it. And so it's fascinating time to live through this era.
Yeah, I find actually because of my training, I'm able to kind of pop out of it and see it. There's the two parts of me. There's the person who lives in this world and in this culture and is experiencing the pandemic personally. And then there's the anthropologist who pops out of it and goes to the 100,000-foot level and says, this is a really interesting experience. Wow. But we can't stay there. And you also made a great point too, that a lot of these seminal events were a moment. JFK being shot, 9/11, these were moments in our history. And so oftentimes if we want to do ethnography, if we want to understand them, it is a retrospective, or we can't get in there as it happens. And this one's so drawn out. And it's constantly changing, that as I'm documenting this, I'm seeing those nuances. Even if I interview somebody in Toronto 2 weeks apart, it's different. So yeah, it's something, isn't it?
It is. It's exciting. It's exciting, and it's also important for us as anthropologists and for the field to really go out there and observe what's happening now in real time, and to look at the eyes of culture and society. I couldn't encourage the students enough, and people who are considering anthropology as a field, this is a perfect time to really get involved.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. And so I have done two TEDx talks on both these research projects. So the first one, Your Grandmother Uses Technology Better Than You, which I love that title so much because I love poking the monster, because I just want to make people think about their lived experience and their assumptions. And I always find just giving a little poke is a great way to do it. And then I just did one, it's launching right now, called Which New Normal Will You Choose? And again, I'm striving within these to get anthropology out to the community at large, that has some maybe negative assumptions about the degree, which we'll get into. That you can do important work. You don't have that doesn't have to be only within this. I always say I'm an anthropologist. What am I, Paco?
An entrepreneur.
An entrepreneur. I'm an anthropologist and an entrepreneur. And I think it's really important for those of us who are using our degrees in different ways to be out there and to be clear that this degree doesn't need to exist in a box.
I agree. Nicely said.
Let's talk about you.
Oh, God. So, goodness. So most of my career, from the time I graduated from UNLV back in 2001, and even prior to graduating from the university, I had already landed a position at the Liberace Museum, which was, I grew up with Liberace. Basically, he lived a few blocks from my house. The museum was 2 blocks away from my childhood home. And when Sandra Harris, who we'll talk about a little later, came and gave a talk in the department, it was so inspiring that I reached out to the curator at the time to say, hey, look, I'd like to volunteer. I'd like to whatever you need me to do, I'm available. I live a few blocks away from the museum. Let's do it. Never thought I'd be taking care of 8 cars, 17 pianos, 150 costumes, and millions of rhinestones. So it was wild. It was great. I remember calling Dr. Kassman shortly after I got the job, and I said, what do I do? And she said, everything that you learned in class, you go and run with it. And back then, keeping in mind, this is not what I looked like when I was at UNLV. I had blonde hair. I had piercings all over the place. Every time I drank water, it was like the Bellagio fountains coming out. It was crazy. Everyone's laughing. So I was nervous. I was terrified, and I was excited at the same time at the adventure. And then I went to St. Louis about a year later, and I went to the American Alliance of Museums National Conference in St. Louis with this blonde hair and bright red outfit, and I was hired originally at Liberace as a collections manager. So back then, the museum registrars or collections managers were mostly women. So you didn't have a lot of men. And there were, I think, 50 of us nationally. And I was the youngest at 26. So I was very lucky. I remember meeting Amy Delahaye and some very important registrars. And then went on from Liberace. I flew to London to potentially to do a project with Selfridges. I don't know if you guys ever saw the TV show Selfridges, where it's the largest department store in London on Oxford Street. Spent 4 days there. It was right after the election of George Bush, and we were on a 747. First time I'd ever flown on a 747. Went over there, and everyone thought I was immigrating to England because George Bush got reelected. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. And came back and ended up landing a position with the City of Las Vegas Office of Cultural Affairs to curate the Centennial Exhibition in 2005 with the city. And all of my undergraduate work that I did studying the archives that had just been purchased by the university, which are the Union Pacific Archives at Special Collections, which were saved by Bob Coffin, who is a former state senator, former assemblyman, former city councilman. He actually appointed me to the Arts Commission many years later. If it wasn't for him, the 500 boxes of the history of this city would have been thrown away. The Union Pacific Railroad never really liked Las Vegas. They were ready to get rid of all this stuff, and he saved it. And I was one of the first researchers, graduate researchers, to actually go into that collection and study it. And just to be able to touch, the original letter that debated, what the name of the city would be, Las Vegas or Los Vegas, go and find it, talk to Sue Kim over at, you can see this stuff. And, this kind of theoretical exhibit that I created for my undergraduate class in the Department of Anthropology, I ended up actually doing it. I ended up getting a chance. I got a big budget. The city gave me the budget, and they gave me the Mob Museum or the old post office, and said, run with it. And I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. And so based on that, after I left the city, I became the interim curator of the Neon Museum. I did two really cool things with the Neon Museum. I acquired the Stardust sign, which was the largest acquisition of it that I had ever acquired. 200-foot sign. And then we moved the La Concha Motel lobby from over where the Riviera used to be, across the street from Circus Circus. Today, we cut it in 6 pieces and we moved it down Las Vegas Boulevard. And then it was now the main lobby of the Neon Museum. So from there, I went on to work as the founding curator of the Las Vegas News Bureau Photo and Film Archives. My dear colleague, friend, Kelly Lux, who was working at UNLV Special Collections shortly before I resigned to go work at Zappos, I told her she'd apply for the job. And she did, and she got it. She's been the archivist ever since. And, it's been so amazing to work both at UNLV with that really early archive, and then the post-World War II archive, which is 6.5 million images of history, of the city's history. Images that have never been seen before. And then all of a sudden, Tony Hsieh from Zappos, the Llama King himself, reaches out. Unbeknownst to me, I'd be giving him a tour of First Friday, and he ends up buying First Friday 3 months later. And I went to go work for him. And I like to say, when I was at Zappos, I was an embedded anthropologist in there, because Zappos is renowned around the world for an amazing company culture. And Veronica, if you could skip a slide over. So that's me with Siegfried and Roy driving Liberace's Volkswagen Rolls Royce. And, this is before Roy was hurt. He was hurt about 2 years later. Actually, no, I lie. 2 years later, because this was in 2002. And then he was hurt in 2003. So no, actually a year later. And then the next slide. That's, yes, that is my desk sitting in a ball pit. Working at Zappos. And I want to say Zappos was instrumental in me becoming, as Veronica says, and I'm going to borrow it, entrepreneur. A lot of anthropologists, go on to academia, and I became an entrepreneur. And Zappos, being at Zappos, it's a small business incubator. I was given an opportunity not just to do tours for the company, but also build them a gift shop. And I had never opened up a gift shop. I had never opened up a retail space. I had never even bought anything for a gift shop or a museum store, as we call it in the museum world. And there in this photo, not just is it quirky, me sitting in my ball pit, but also there's the floor plan for the future gift shop for Zappos. And so we opened it. It started off with $50 a week in sales. When I left Zappos in 2017, we were making $5,000 a month in sales, just selling Zappos swag. And so from there, I left Zappos in 2017. I ended up getting a job at Clark County to be their curator, just as I had just started at the county when 1 October happened, the massacre at the Route 91 festival. And talk about PTSD. I tried to, and I launched my tour company that same week. So it was really hard especially since I had been to Life is Beautiful, which is the music festival, a week before Route 91, and knowing that that individual was looking down on us and deciding which festival he was going to attack, you know, and then he waited a week and decided to attack Route 91. So being in Vegas during that, and then working at the county, and then curating 2 exhibitions for the victims and the first responders was the most difficult exhibitions I'd ever curated in my life. The 58 victim exhibition that we did, which it really affected me in a profound way, in a very negative way. I had to get help. And when I go to the Memorial Garden downtown, which is just a block away from my home, I go there to pay respect to people that I had never met, but met them through their images and paintings that were sent to Las Vegas of each of these victims, of each of these individuals, and I got to know them that way. And these paintings were sent from artists from around the globe in honor of these people, and then being able to work with these paintings and then curate an exhibition at the Clark County Government Center downtown was profound. It changed my life. Every October 1st, I go and honor them. I say a prayer to them, and that's one of the beautiful things that, you know, as if I wouldn't have studied anthropology, I would have never gotten a chance to do that, to you know, to really have this connection with so many different museums, but then these victims that came to my hometown and lost their lives here. And then from there, I went on to start my own little art consulting business, and was going to get rid of it. And then I really was going to just focus on my tour company, Fabulous Story Tours, because I've been giving tours of Vegas for so many years, and really telling the public about the history of our community. And then in earlier this year, I was going to not do any more art and just focus on my tours. And then the pandemic hit, and then my tours collapsed, and Psionic Artworks blossomed from there. 2 weeks after my tours collapsed in March, I went on to start Psionic, and it was thanks to Psionic. If you move to the next slide over, so there's 2 images there. There's my press image for my new job at Museum Fiasco, and then the bottom image is me, Gear Duran, and one of the managers at the Adult Superstores. So I got in touch. Basically, Bob Coffin, former city councilman Bob Coffin, called me and said, the Adult Superstores are looking to have the boards on their businesses painted by artists, and they asked me to do that. And I reluctantly said yes, but you know, when Bob Coffin was such an instrumental part of my career, from my time at UNLV to today, you don't, and plus he put me on the Arts Commission, you just tell Bob, you say, he'll say jump, you say how high, anything you need, Bob. And so the painting that's there was the first major painting that we did, and it's actually the phoenix and the dragon. And the phoenix and the dragon in Chinese mythology represents marital bliss. And for me, this year has been really the phoenix rising from the ashes. And this painting is very respectful of Asian culture. It's in Chinatown. And the artist, Gear Duran, his grandfather is Chinese. His great-grandfather was Chinese and came here to build the railroads in the West Coast. And he married a Native American woman. And so I thought it was very fitting for Gear to do this project. And from then, we've curated many important murals, large murals throughout the city. And so, and then thanks to Psionic and these doors kind of opening up, Ryan Doherty, who owns most of the bars on Fremont Street, like Corner Bar and Park on Fremont, and he has a dance club also. He reached out and has, Paco, I'm opening up a museum. Do you know anyone who would be interested? And I said, oh yeah, I know of some people. And next to 5 minutes later, I sent them another note and I said, maybe I'm interested. And 18 hours later, I was hired. So anthropologists are everywhere. And thanks to Veronica, and I want to say this, I have reconnected with the degree that I have. And looking back, even though I'm getting my master's degree in urban leadership through the College of Public Policy and Leadership, I'm kind of kicking myself. I should have gone back to the Department of Anthropology, but it doesn't mean I can't get my PhD. So Peter, FYI. So that's my career in a nutshell. There's a lot more, but thanks to being able to study in the department and the great professors I had, sadly, a lot of the professors are no longer with us. And of course, I was at UNLV back in the late 90s. Thanks to the many books that we had to read, thanks to the stories we got to understand and read and really experience, I have a much, much better understanding of culture and society. And a lot of that I've been able to translate in that beautiful mural working with Gear Duran in Chinatown. And it's thanks to the Department of Anthropology.
Yeah, Paco, you and I were talking when we were prepping for this talk that, anthropology is life-changing. It completely, I'm a whole different human being because of my degree than when I first, I was so naive and just like wide-eyed and bushy-tailed when I first stepped foot in that department. And it's not that like it refines you, but it forces introspection in order to break down your assumptions, and it opens you in a way that I think is really quite needed. I'm gonna start spinning. We got a couple more slides, but I also want to make sure we are time cognizant. And so, Paco, let's dive into some of the issues that we really want to chew the fat with the group.
Absolutely.
Does that sound good? Okay. I love that your pinky's up while you're drinking water.
My Argentinian parents taught me that. It's a very Argentinian.
So good.
Yeah. Sorry.
And so, of course, as we've been saying, like the strength of anthropology is that, Paco, you've been talking about at the museum the issue of leadership versus management. And like I think actually your story of your latest experience with this is really a good one. Do you want to talk about like the clothing and the what you're doing with your team there?
Yeah, so I don't manage people, I lead them. And I learned that from my first boss, Sandra Harris, at the Liberace Museum 20 years ago, when she told me, she said, managing people or leading people is like herding cats. You hire the right cats and let them go. And my current boss, Ryan Doherty, same thing. He just wants to hire the right people and just let them go and let them thrive. And that's the how I take my management. That's my management style. I take into account the individual and the culture they were raised in. And even though I have a dress code, I just tell everyone we're black, and I don't care how it looks, And then for the holidays, I told them accessorize with a little red, and you run with it. And so I have some of my security guards that are wearing hats. There's a great photo of me on Facebook, which I'll post later. We call ourselves the Museum Fiasco Angels, and it's the whole crew in the exhibition itself. So it's important to lead, and leading is being very mindful and empathetic to the individual. And I don't. When I started working 30 years ago at the MGM Grand Hotel, we couldn't have long hair, we couldn't have earrings, we were no visible tattoos. And now you walk in any casino, everybody has tattoos, everyone has earrings. Yeah. And so we've allowed individual culture and those individuals to blossom within those places of employment. And I think that's very, very, very important in the way I manage people. And I think anthropologists are perfect. We have the toolkits to be able to understand that best.
Yeah, I think there's, in a way, we're a little bit like 2-year-olds where we ask why constantly. Like, you're not allowed to wear earrings. Why? Well, because. But why? And we just like keep going, because like, if you can't show me a good reason, and I mean a reason that is so good that it's kind of global, then I don't think it's a good enough reason. Right. To remove my expression of culture, to be clear, your expression of culture is absolutely valid. But if you're removing my sense of culture, I need to know why. And, you know, you and I have talked, Paco, about Black Lives Matter and the pandemic, and we have a lot of social upheaval right now happening simply just naturally because of the pandemic. What we thought was normal, right? Like you and I, as anthropologists, we've never subscribed to normal. We know normal is a construct, but there's plenty of people around the world who felt like this was what normal was, and it was all very organized. And clearly, that can just go away in a snap. And so, anthropologists have this ability to come in and help support people who are maybe going through culture shock because they're getting to know their lives and their cultures in a different way for the first time.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I recall a time when I was in the Department of Anthropology when a woman at McCarran Airport, an African American woman, was fired from her job, and because she had braids in her hair, and the McCarran Airport did not allow her to express her culture. And I reached out to the department and I said, we need to make a statement. And it was crickets from the department. And I'm like, gosh, why aren't we flexing our muscles a little bit? And I know we'll talk a little bit more about that. I think that was a really good opportunity for an anthropologist in the department to really say something publicly.
Yeah, yeah, to inject understanding, really. Um, and then we do have that strength just to speak to that of like being able to leverage history in order to address issues, just like you're saying. That, you know, of course, not all anthropology is looking into the past, although everyone likes to just say, oh, so you're like Indiana Jones. And I know some of you are face palming right now because I do every time. But we don't just look into the past, but we know how to understand past experiences and how culture has been over hundreds of years in order to create understanding for what's happening now, because nothing happens in a silo. This is all interconnected. We wouldn't have the Black Lives Matter movement if there wasn't hundreds of years of history in this country that is injected into our culture today, right? And yeah, I think our voices can be really valuable in such scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'm a Lukumi practitioner, and understanding, when African slaves were brought to the Caribbean, and they had to hide their religious practices. And now, being practicing their religious practices as my own and really being part of that culture, I have a much, much better understanding of how that culture has affected me as a Latino, because Latinos are much more open to, the extrasensorial, and understanding not just, I come from a half Jewish, half Catholic background, and then now I've been practicing Lukumi. So really, it's something that is very intrinsic in Latinos and Latino culture, is to you may have your religion, but then you're open to other things as well.
Yeah. And I'm loving all the questions and comments coming in. I'm really excited to dive into them. Um, I I don't want to try and stay too much into, I'm like trying to be so cognizant of time because I know we're getting close, but just to underscore what we've been saying, this can go to the political level. This can play out in an international forum, and really should, but it isn't that much. And from the bottom of my heart, I wish it was, because there's so much culture clash constantly happening. And even within our media, we could be doing such a better job if we were asserting ourselves. And I think that's really the point here, is the assertion. It has to come from within anthropology. No one's calling us, or at least very few people know to call us. We need a Batman sign is what we need. We need like a giant A to shine in the sky, like call an anthropologist, we'll come and help. And then definitely in in business, just like you've been saying, Paco, at Zappos, and my own experiences as an entrepreneur, that understanding company culture can actually be a business strategy, both within and without. And when I teach LGBTQ issues, I'm never just teaching, here's the stuff you need to know to market. I'm teaching, here's what you need to do internally in order to create that foundation, in order to reach out to the groups of people that you would like to call out to. So, we're speaking to the choir here that we're just such a wonderful area of study, but we have some issues. So not to go on too long, but I think we should talk about the issues that we see that are holding us back, and then really dive into questions. But that you and I both have admitted feeling a lack of support from our academic brothers and sisters, from our alma maters. I published a book that was not sanctioned, and it's been crickets, and crickets speak just as loud as actual words. Same with that pressure to conform. Even, I was trained that entrepreneurship was not an option for, like, those words were never spoken. Even to say that I wanted to be an applied anthropologist when I was at uni was kind of unusual. I really only had Paul Farmer and reading his books, and that's what drove me in that direction. But today, luckily, applied anthropology is becoming much more common, but I don't think it's common enough.
Right. I mean, I applied mine to the museum and cultural world, and I'm grateful to the Department of Anthropology for doing that for me. And I was estranged from the department for a while, and if it wasn't for Dr. Gray bringing me back in 2014, I wouldn't be here today. I felt, that the department could have done more. And I remember one anthropologist telling me, Dr. Castman was very good at students liked her, but she wasn't good with her colleagues or whatever. And I'm like, at the end of the day, aren't we there for the students? Aren't we there to encourage them to be the best they can, and to have bright careers in multiple areas, and to really, change the world by being an anthropologist? And if it takes one business at a time, then let's do it. I mean, there is a tuition to be paid for the degree of experience in the University of Life. And if there's anything I can encourage students, get your bachelor's and then go out and work in the world, and get your master's and go out and work in the world. Don't go and get your BA, MA, PhD all at once without any experience, because it's like, in the business world, you can have all the degrees on the planet, but if you have no experience, I can't hire you. You're useless to me. Unless you want to become an academic and write. So I think it's
still, I actually want to interject there, because even still, I think that going the straight path and going, BA, MA, PhD, and then straight into professorship or research, you haven't gotten the chance in between to flex your muscles. And so you've learned all of these things, tools, techniques, modes of thinking, but you haven't actually applied them out in the world. Even if you apply them as a barista at Starbucks, get yourself in positions where you're clashing with other cultures and speaking to others and talking about what you've learned. And I just saw a question that's relevant to this slide, so I do want to speak to it. That trauma from genocide in anthropology's early days, that's where this timidity, in my opinion, is rooting from. So anthropology, when it was first evolving as an area of study, was leveraged by governments to help commit genocide. And there's scarring within our history that has, I deeply believe, has created a trauma within the entire field that holds us back from pushing forward and from doing PR against this is the worst degree to get and spend your money on, all that BS. Because even with when I was at university, we had a really great conversation about, like, what about anthropologists who are working in the military. And there was a big argument about that because it's applied anthropology, but there's fear of writing that line And so I do think this training is important, that we have to understand this history within anthropology, and we have to do the do no harm, but it's we can't just stay here, otherwise we're wounding our own field. And I know, Peter, we're almost out of time.
Yeah, we are actually out of time. That was terrific, and we can keep going.
Sorry,
The good thing, though, for students, so first off, thank you, Veronica Kirin. Thank you, Brian Paco Alvarez, for a really thought-provoking discussion about anthropology, both in theory, but also the experiences that this can touch on outside of the academy. But both of you have agreed to make yourselves available to hang on if undergrad or grad students would like to extend the conversation. You had some terrific questions, like Natalie and Ian raised a question about distinctions between ethnography and journalism and oral history. Katrina asked a terrific question about anthropology in the real world. So for others who might have to go on to another class or meeting, I'll say thank you for joining us today for this informative and welcome talk. And again, if you go to the Neon Museum, for example, you can now see an imprint you had not appreciated prior to this. But for those of you students who would like to stick around, stay on. Esther will manage this. And for other faculty, I will be leaving here. So this is me saying adieu. But students, again, feel free to stay on and feel free to raise questions, including Katrina, Natalie, Ian, if you can. Okay. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. You're so wonderful. Thanks for having us. And we really do welcome questions. We're so excited to get into discourse with you. And Paco and I both know we tend to wax as we speak. And so we apologize for going a little long. But let's answer your questions. So Esther, do you have questions tracked for us?
All right. Well, one of the first questions that came up early in the chat from Ian seems like a real-time ethnography bleeds into investigative reporting and journalism.
Yeah, so you broke up a little bit as you're saying that, but so the question is that it seems like real-time ethnography is bleeding into journalism. And so I appreciate that question or that comment. I'm not trained as a journalist and I'm not doing investigative journalism. I'm not trying to specifically look into any specific area of what's happening around the world. I'm documenting. And to that end, I'm in fact not inserting myself. And I'm specifically also using the same set of questions, just like an ethnographer would. And I use a release template that I got from, I forget which university now. I think from IU, Indiana University, but it's an anthropological ethnographic release form that says, you're the one in control. You're the one who owns your information. If you ever have to redact, you are allowed to. If you want copies of this, you may request them at any time, even if it's 20 years in the future. And that's the same policy that I used with my first book as well, that this is your information. I'm documenting, I'm a conduit, but I'm not making any claims. It is simply what it is. This is how life was during this period of time.
All right. So thank you, Natalie. The next question is, how do anthropologists distinguish their work as ethnograph versus oral history, or do you see them as the same?
And Paco, please feel free to jump in too. But so ethnography is, I think they bleed into each other, and maybe I'm incorrect, but to me, they bleed into each other, where oral history is the documenting of the past experiences within a culture group, and one may document those as an ethnographer. So one may say, okay, I'm taking the oral history and I'm documenting them in order to fill out the fabric of what this culture is like. So they do go together, but I would say oral histories can enter ethnography, but ethnography is not oral history. Is that a good enough distinction? I want to make sure I answer that question well.
And if I could add to that, UNLV has a very active oral history program through UNLV Special Collections, and that is spearheaded by Clay T. White. And I did an oral history with her, and so has a lot of my family, about what it was like living in Las Vegas in the 1960s. and beyond. And so that information, if there's a student out there, especially in the Department of Anthropology, that wants to go and study, what culture was like in this community, there is a treasure trove just across the quad to the library of this information. And I'm like several months behind in sending my information to special collections. I know Clayton's been reaching out, saying you need to send us the information. So there's information there, and a lot of the people that have done these oral histories are still alive, so you can really dig deep and do a really good ethnography with them, and what Las Vegas is like in real time.
That's so cool. But yeah, so oral history is part of the culture. You're helping to describe part of the culture, but there's so much more to culture. There's the artifacts of our cultures. There's the actual events that go into our culture. And so I'm documenting a specific event, and I'm using interviews in order to do it, but there's news articles that will be inserted into the book, and facts and figures and all these other things too. So there's a lot more than just that. One is part of the whole.
All right, one of the other questions, as someone who's majoring in engineering and minoring in anthropology, the title and the description of this seminar was pretty interesting. Why did you decide to name it this? Are there any niches that you see this sort of junction would be valuable in?
So I named it, I'm the reason I chose that tagline because one of my colleagues went to University of Michigan for engineering and then came to Grand Valley State University for anthropology. And he's since leveraged those degrees together into an enormous career in business. And so if you want to put those two together, I think it's brilliant because, first of all, as an engineer, you're creating things that are going to impact more than one culture, surely. Even if you're talking about microgroups, right? Like you're impacting more than one culture group. And especially if you ever want to work at an international organization, if you want to work overseas, your degree is going to leverage so many opportunities for you being combined with engineering rather than just doing engineering. And I let me be clear, I have so many friends who are engineers and y'all are totally brilliant on your own, but I do think anthropology as an additional field is incredible.
If I could just add to that, I think especially with what's going on in the Middle East right now with the construction projects, especially in Dubai. I know that Egypt is finishing up their new world's largest museum, and those teams that come in from around the world. I mean, a lot of the engineers, the architects are coming in from England, from the United States, to build these enormously tall buildings in the Middle East. Having a background in anthropology really helps you understand the cultures of the Middle East and what you're getting yourself into, because it's not just building buildings, but it's understanding the culture and who these individuals are over there and how they look at the world. And so having a degree in anthropology and a degree in engineering is just fascinating, especially if you want to travel with your with your career.
Mm-hmm. Even where you're organizing the layout within a building, if this is a culture group that tends to drive on the left side of the road instead of the right side of the road, that means they walk on the left side of the hallway instead of the right side of the hallway. And so then what are you reversing within that building so it is a natural left turn in the way that our right turn would be, or they would see something. There's so many things that have cultural touch points that anthropology would be useful for sure.
If I know in a conversation we had earlier about GM and and about the Chevy Nova when they took it to Mexico, and it failed because Latinos are not going to buy a car that's called doesn't run, Nova, which means it doesn't run. So let's take there. So.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. But then GM went on to employ the most anthropologists, at least for a while. They had an enormous staff of anthropologists.
Thank you. Thank you both. Actually, Paco, I think you answered a question that Kira had posed. Kira, if your question is not answered, please unmute. It says that she's got experience in Autodesk and and CAD, and wanted to see how anthropology could be applied to civil engineering, which is exactly what I believe you guys just answered. Kira, please speak up if there's still a piece of that question that I haven't quite grasped. And so there's lots of great comments here, by the way. But what are the 3 things that you would like for take away from this lecture?
Be assertive.
Don't be afraid to call yourself an anthropologist. Be proud of it. I mean, people get very curious when you tell them you're an anthropologist, and they're like, wow, you know. And it is kind of, excuse the expression, sexy. It does have you could say archaeologist, you could say anthropologist. You know, I like to say I talk to dead people, so. But it is, you know, don't be afraid to use it. It because it sparks an interest and a curiosity.
Absolutely, it really does. And to add to that too, by claiming you're an anthropologist, by saying I have a degree in anthropology, you're starting to push back against the very bizarre, frustrating rhetoric that we have one of the top 10 most useless degrees. This is the most useful degree, and we need to be fighting back against that. And so even if you don't stay within the field, so staying in academia, you're going to be using your degree. And I want for you to be thinking about every day how your degree is being used in your career, whether or not it has the label anthropologist on it, so that you can say, I am an anthropologist, and people are saying, but wait, like, I mean, I get this question all the time. Wait, you're an entrepreneur. You damn straight I am. I'm both. And I use anthropology constantly every day in my career.
Absolutely. We do, anthropology as a field has a PR problem, and unfortunately our past history, as atrocious and as heartbreaking as it is, we really have a golden opportunity, especially, you know, the future anthropologists that are listening to this, and grad students as well, that, you know, you can right that wrong as best we can in a very empathetic way, and take back, you know, our field and to what it is, and how desperately it's needed right now. Because one of the big challenges we have, especially in lieu of Black Lives Matter and the huge civil and social upheaval that the country and the world is going through right now, is, you know, with Black Lives Matter really opened my eyes up, but then realized, God, why aren't they calling me to help? And what a lot of businesses, big corporations are doing is they're calling marketing teams. And it's like, they should be calling anthropologists. And that's where we need to start flexing our muscles. And I know, Veronica, you and I have talked a lot about this.
Yeah, I think we could go on for a very, very long time about that very topic, and then extrapolate from that just how anthropologists should absolutely be called for so many more issues.
I know, it does seem like you guys need a big mega horn.
We all do. That should be a graduation gift for every single anthropologist. Here's your mega horn. Go out in the world and make it better.
So there's 2 questions, and they're kind of related along the same continuum. And it's basically pursuing things that are outside of academia. One is, how can we get involved in museums and ethnographic research as undergrads? And then the second one is, for students wanting to continue studies outside of academia, how do you recommend, what are your recommendations in pursuing that?
Go ahead, Veronica.
Well, you're the museum guy.
So, God, you know, it pains me to say this, and the Department of Anthropology at UNLV was developing a museum studies program, and with Vicki Kassman, unfortunately leaving the college, the whole program, future program, died. And just as Las Vegas was beginning to build new institutions, not just Liberace, but, you know, if you think about it, Clark County has 26 museums. We desperately need museum professionals to go and work in museums. And unfortunately, in Las Vegas, a colleague of mine calls museums in Las Vegas MENAs, museums in name alone, because they're more edutainment, infotainment attractions. And it's heartbreaking because we have students in the department right now that probably have that spark that want to go and work in museums. And unfortunately, one of the struggles that a lot of museums are having right now throughout the United States is that the people at the top are not museum people. They're business people without an inkling at all of what anthropology, history, understanding. They've changed their names from executive directors to CFOs. The curators have been pushed down, way down the totem pole at institutions. So we have to start flexing our muscles. There was an incident here in Las Vegas over the summer with the Neon Museum where someone with an art background who did spend some time at working at the Neon Museum made an accusation of the management at the museum, accusing them of something terrible. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, if they would have followed the curatorial plan I built them as an anthropologist, they would not have had this problem. And so what has happened in museums, and this is everywhere, is that the wrong people are running museums. And that's a huge problem. And if you want to get involved in museums, it's just, with me, it started off volunteering. Literally, I volunteered. And I swept the floors, and I cleaned artifacts, and I sewed rhinestones. So it really, in many instances, that. And I know that's really hard, especially in the economy, if you have to support yourself economically. But, you know, volunteering and really starting to flex your muscles from the inside, and really for us to change museums and how museum culture is, we have to get hired in museums. You know, and keep our mouths quiet until we can flex our muscles and say, hey, look, you know, museums are the institutions that help protect the patrimony or you know, the history of our community. And it's not just the artifacts, but also the stories that are attached to those artifacts.
Yeah, and I see a two-pronged approach here that, you know, UNLV can take action in helping to create internships to assert themselves within the museum community, because I would argue that Las Vegas is a bit of a museum mecca. Like, you guys have so many museums in one city. It is mind-blowing, the opportunity that is there. And it is a shame that the museums don't understand how to be a museum to hire us. But then I would also encourage you as students, as future anthropologists or anthropologists who have graduated but are looking back and thinking, I really want to use my degree more, to be willing to assert yourselves. At least at my university, so let me say that, at my university, we had to do either a field study or an independent study in order to earn our degree. We had to have those credits in order to graduate. And so my independent study was actually my first enlistment with the NCCCs. So my deployment down to Hurricane Katrina, I went back to university after that year and wrote a paper on my experiences in a different culture, because I was from Michigan and I was put into New Orleans and in a disaster zone. So very different culture, very different life experiences. And was able to write a paper on that and earn my credits that way. So if you want to get into museums, or you want to get into a certain industry, but you want your anthropology degree, as Paco said earlier, life experience is priceless. So insert yourself, write your own independent study plan, present it to the CEO or the COO or the whomever, get yourself into the organization that you want to get a foothold in. Do your independent study or your field study that way, get your credits, but you're also still supported by your student loan or your scholarship or the funds you've set aside for university. And that way you're exiting university with a life experience you want. And you've also primed another industry or the museums to expect an anthropologist to be involved to some extent.
You guys just keep answering the questions before I even pose them. So I'm going to read this question, which I think Veronica and Paco, you actually both touched on just a little bit. Can anthropologists work in contemporary subcultures? Most things I consume are about nationalities, religions, other races, which I think are major identities. But
Big time.
what about cultures what about cultures that develop beneath those, like kawaii culture among Japanese girls or ballroom culture among the LGBT people?
Oh,
Love that.
yes. It's called participant observation.
Exactly.
If I can just say quickly, I have two friends here locally that are doing a documentary on subcultures in Las Vegas in the late 1990s, hip hop culture, b-boy culture, and rave culture. And I'm a product of the 1990s rave scene, and I was in there. You talk to any professor in the department, they saw I would come to school dressed as a raver. I was a raver, you know. Yes, absolutely, without a doubt. And there's so many subcultures right now. It's just a matter of getting into it. I mean, look at what Madonna did in the 1980s with Vogue, and that was all part of the ball culture in you know, the African American LGBTQ community back in New York City. And you know, you talk to some of the people that were there, they really don't like Madonna very much because she kind of exploited, or in their eyes, they exploited their culture for commercial gain. And there's a lot of subcultures right now everywhere to go and explore.
Definitely. And I even want to highlight the fact that we're in this internet age. It's gotten us through the pandemic, of course, but it's also the reason I've even built my company. It's the reason I can work with people all over the world. And for better or for worse, Reddit is a phenomenal deep dive into subcultures. If you have an interest, you can find it on the internet, and especially on Reddit. And I use Reddit personally to make sure that I have a well-rounded, deep understanding of the LGBTQ community, which is my community, but I'm not in every subculture of my community, right? And so I use Reddit, I use those forums to make sure that I'm on the up and up. So when I'm doing corporate trainings on LGBTQ culture, both as an anthropologist and as an entrepreneur, I know exactly what I'm talking about to the day. I know what is happening within my culture group and within the subcultures that I'm not even a part of to the moment. And so if you're interested in a specific subculture, again, I'm a huge fanatic for that entrepreneurial spirit. It just takes some gumption. All you have to do is decide that you're going to study something, and you go study it and you become the leading expert on it. It's all you got to do. Just decide and go do it.
Amen. Beautiful.
Well said. Well said. There's a lot of praise for you guys on the chat, which I will be recording so you guys can read it later. But I think we've come to the end of questions. We have maybe 2 or 3 more minutes. Is there anyone that wants to open their mic?
And I'll stop sharing actually so we can see people.
And while we're waiting for someone to unmute their mic, another question came in. What stuff do you do in LGBT anthropology? How do you get involved besides already being part of the community?
You decide. So for me, I am doing trainings within companies. So it's a typically what I do day to day is that I'm coaching other entrepreneurs. I'm helping them within their businesses. But a sliver of that is doing corporate trainings for LGBTQ issues. And so I'm helping company culture internally be more friendly, be more welcoming, be more, woke, if we will. So make sure that their employee handbook has alternative pronouns. Make sure that we use the word partner when you're talking about HR benefits. But then also doing some of the work to not, rainbow wash during Pride. As we all know, we see like Bud Light with a rainbow on it. We're like, yeah, where were you during the original Pride? And so helping companies not just like try to market after us, it drives me crazy. So that's the work that I do. It's a very small sliver of my total business work, but I do love doing it when I do it. And like I said, you just decide and then you go after it and you fill up your beautiful brain until it's overflowing. And so then you overflow onto others who hire you.
If I could add to that, my work with the LGBTQ community, also my community, is on the artistic side. Anytime, let's say, a fan wants to do a fundraiser using art, they call me. The LGBT Center wants to curate a mural. I offer myself. I'm working right now with the Sin City Sisters to make the official Las Vegas LGBTQ art gallery at Commercial Center. And so that's how I give back to that.
That's so cool. I can't wait to see it.
Any questions out there? Anyone want to unmute?
Yeah, hi, my name is Arami. I am from Vegas.
Oh no, Jeremy, you froze. Shoot.
Oh,
Oh,
Hello,
I
can
think
you?
hi. Yes, we
Can
can.
you hear me now? Okay, cool. Hi, my name is Arami. I'm from Vegas. I am currently a poli-sci major. I know, completely different world. But I have always been very interested in archaeology and just like studying literally everything underneath that branch. Um, and I was honestly considering a major change, changing my major, but I don't know, like I guess I'm asking for some advice. Like, what advice would you guys give me who potentially wants to come in to the anthropological world?
I would think about what your horizon is. And I didn't know when I was young. I changed my major 4 times before I became an anthropologist. I didn't know anthropology existed though for half of those. And I actually did a mini minor in poli sci. So high five. And that means a minor is 6 credits or 6 courses. I did 3 courses, and I have all kinds of mini minors. But I would really think about what's your horizon, and we don't teach that enough. So what are you heading towards right now? You know, when you're driving in your car, if you stare at the white line, you're going to go off the road. But if you're looking far ahead, you're pointed in that direction and you will go there. So imagine yourself in 5 years and 10 years as much as you can, and think about who you want to be, and then think about which degree will empower you most in order to get there. And I'm a big fan again of it's up to you to explain why you chose your degree and how it can be leveraged into the field or into the area that you want to work in. So don't worry about what they tell you it's supposed to be. Just worry about which degree is going to empower you most in order to be who you want to be. And then you tell them exactly why it does that.
Arami, I'm sure you see the chat there. Somebody said, make sure to take Dr. Farhani's Anth 105. He is one of our younger faculty members, person of color, and he just is a little unconventional within the boundaries of convention, if I may say. That's just my opinion. It's not the university's opinion.
great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I will be looking for his class here in the spring. I will be starting at UNLV in the spring. So this is great. I'm excited. Thank you guys so much.
Yay, that's awesome.
We've
And I
got about
think
1 minute.
So I think someone asked at one point, like, how do you stay involved in anthro or keep studying anthro even after you've graduated? And there's some really great podcasts out there. There's really great YouTube channels out there. You can take a polishing up certificate from edX. I think it's from Harvard, actually, which is always fun. So there's definitely a lot of different ways to stay involved. And then I always encourage just get involved with your alma mater. Come back and speak once you feel like you are ready. We need more people who are champions for our field of study.
And if I can just say in closing, Veronica, I agree. get involved. I mean, Dr. Gray reached out to me 6 years ago, and look where I'm at now. Look, all of us are now together. Get involved. Don't be afraid of calling the department. What can I do to help? And look at who the big anthropologists are out there. Simon Sinek, Mayor Carolyn Goodman with Las Vegas, Sandra Harris, The Mentalist. I mean, there's so many out there. We just need to reach out to them and get involved. And the department does need that connection with the business world. And so, I know that moving forward, I'm going to do more for the department, especially next year.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm cooking up an entrepreneurship course in my head. Who knows when that'll happen? But I think if we combine the tenets of entrepreneurship with the strength of anthropology, and we really work to teach new anthropologists how to talk about the degree in any field, we're unstoppable.
Amen.
I think that we're out of time. I just saw another question pop through, but it does seem like we're out of time. It is 1 o'clock. I'm going to throw this question out there. People, if you need to jump off, please do so. Last question from Kyle, who says that, this is about using anthropology in business. Wanted to know how you could gain experience in a career such as user experience research, where anthro is used a lot, but it's really hard to find an internship in that.
I'm nodding my head because I owned a website development company for 5.5 years before I sold it in 2018. So yes. UX, anthro, it's perfect. It's a great marriage. Again, it's up to you to spin it for them. And if you want to be doing UX, just get your hands in. There's so many wonderful free trainings online. Just build your portfolio independent. That's exactly what I did to build my business. You can create a beautiful portfolio and then tell them all exactly why anthropology is exactly the degree that you need in order to be a kick-ass UX designer.
Paco and Veronica, I want to thank you both so much. People seem to be really energized by what you've said, showing us how to color outside the box. We really appreciate it. And it's my hope that we can bring you back again.
Oh, I would love it. You guys have been so great. I want to meet all of you in person. I hope someday I do. Connect with me, look me up, look up Paco. We're here for you. Just tell us what you need. We're ready.
Absolutely. Be who you were meant to be, and you'll set the world on fire.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. So we're going to conclude this lecture. And thank you again, Paco and Veronica.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.